I had been gone for 3 weeks, just long enough for everything to feel slightly off when I returned. The house was spotless, too spotless. Olivia wasn't a messy person, but there was always some sign of life when I came home. Shoes by the door, an open book on the coffee table, a coffee cup left in the sink. But now, everything was staged. The throw pillows were perfectly arranged. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers, and the fridge was stocked with expensive wines we never drank. While you're here, leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to know. I set my bags down, scanning the living room, a gnawing feeling creeping in. Olivia? Upstairs. Her voice was bright, cheerful. I walked up, finding her sitting at her vanity, carefully touching up her makeup. She turned, smiling. Hey, stranger. Welcome home. I leaned in, kissing her cheek. She smelled different. Not bad, just different. You going somewhere? I asked. She laughed lightly. Charity event planning never stops. We're finalizing details for the gala tonight. Of course. The gala. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her apply lipstick with practiced ease. Everything all right while I was gone? She hesitated just a second too long. Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't it be? I shrugged. No reason. The house just feels different. She let out a breathy laugh. That's what happens when I actually clean up after myself. But something about her smile felt forced. And for the first time in our marriage, I wondered if Olivia was hiding something. The night of the gala arrived, and Olivia looked stunning. She wore a deep red gown, the fabric hugging her frame effortlessly, her hair swept into a perfect updo. She had always known how to command attention in a room, how to make people orbit around her like she was the center of the universe. And for years, I had admired that about her. But tonight, something felt different. You're quiet, she said as we drove to the venue, her eyes flickering toward me. Just tired, I lied. I wasn't tired. I was watching. Every movement, every glance, every breath. The way she clutched her clutch tighter when her phone buzzed. The way she angled the screen away from me. How quickly she swiped the notification away without reading it. You sure everything's okay? I asked, keeping my tone casual. She turned to me with that same bright smile, the one that could disarm anyone in seconds. Of course, Ethan. It's a big night. I just want everything to be perfect. Perfect. That word sat uneasily with me. The gala was everything Olivia had worked for, grand, extravagant, filled with the city's wealthiest patrons. Guests sipped champagne from crystal flutes, laughter and soft jazz blending into an elegant hum of indulgence. Olivia moved through the crowd like a queen, greeting donors, exchanging pleasantries, her charm effortless. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the only one not in on the script. I caught glimpses of her checking her phone when she thought no one was looking, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for someone. But every time our eyes met, she smiled, acted as if everything was exactly as it should be. An hour into the evening, I excused myself to get a drink. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was a caterer, a young woman with sharp eyes and an uneasy expression. Mr. Caldwell? I frowned. Yes? She hesitated, glancing around before lowering her voice. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but your wife. She's in the back pantry, with Mr. Kensington. The name sent a slow, cold burn through my chest. Preston Kensington, the event sponsor. The man Olivia had spent months charming, securing donations, making him feel like he was single-handedly saving the city's charities. I exhaled, keeping my face unreadable. Are you sure? The caterer bit her lip, nodding. I saw them slipping together. They've been in there for a while. I clenched my jaw, forcing my hands to remain still. Thank you. She nodded quickly and disappeared into the crowd. I turned, scanning the room. Olivia was nowhere to be seen. I took a slow breath. I could storm in there, rip the door open, and demand the truth. But Olivia was a master manipulator. She'd have an excuse ready, a rehearsed laugh, a look of feigned innocence. And if I confronted her now, she'd lie to my face. No, if I was going to do this, I had to be smart. I had to catch her in a way she couldn't escape. So instead of heading toward the pantry, I walked toward the head waiter. And I handed him an envelope. 10 minutes later, Olivia returned to the ballroom, her hair slightly tousled, her lipstick looking a little less perfect than before. She slipped seamlessly back into the crowd, flashing smiles, touching arms, laughing as if nothing had happened. But I knew, and soon, so would everyone else. The morning after the gala, Olivia was radiant. She hummed softly as she poured herself a cup of coffee, wearing the silk robe I had bought her last Christmas. She moved around the kitchen like a woman who had everything under control. "Last night was perfect," she said, flashing me a smile. "The donations exceeded expectations, and Preston promised another round of funding for next year's charity drive. I think we really made an impression." I studied her carefully. Preston promised funding? Of course he did. He'd had personalized attention from Olivia all evening. I took a sip of my coffee. "Must have been a big night for you." She laughed lightly. "It was. And exhausting. You left so early, I barely had a chance to say goodnight." A test. She was watching my reaction. I shrugged. I had an early morning. Didn't want to linger. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered. She wasn't sure if I knew. Good. I let the silence stretch a little too long before standing. "I'll be in the office." She nodded, watching me as I left. I could feel it. She was waiting for a sign. A sign that I had seen her slip away, that I had followed her, that I had any proof at all. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Not yet. That afternoon, while Olivia was out meeting her business contacts, I went looking. She had always been meticulous with her belongings, but even careful people made mistakes. I started in the closet, running my hands along the back shelves where she kept her expensive purses. Nothing. I moved to her vanity, opening drawers, scanning for anything that didn't belong. Still nothing. Then, I checked her office. I opened the bottom drawer, the one she kept locked. Her personal documents, paperwork, business expenses, things she didn't want misplaced. But mixed between the neatly stacked folders, I found something that didn't belong. A small gift box, wrapped in deep navy paper, tied with a crisp ribbon. It wasn't my birthday. It wasn't our anniversary. And inside, nestled in a soft velvet case, was a custom-engraved set of cufflinks. Preston K. I stared at them, my heartbeat steady, my mind running through every possible excuse she could come up with. Maybe it was a thank you gift. Maybe she had gotten them for him as a business gesture. Maybe, no, she had hidden them. She hadn't told me about them, and that meant I was right. She wasn't just crossing lines. She was making plans. I exhaled slowly, rolling the cufflinks in my palm. She had no idea I had found them, and that meant I had the upper hand. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Instead, I came up with a better plan. I took one of the cufflinks and scratched it against the edge of the drawer, leaving a long, jagged mark down the polished surface. Then I placed them back inside the box, rewrapped it exactly as I had found it, and slid it back into the drawer. Then, I waited. That evening, Olivia came home late. She breezed through the door with a practiced smile, setting her purse down as she kicked off her heels. "Long day," she sighed. I nodded from the couch. "Productive?" She stretched, rolling her shoulders. "Very. More meetings with Preston, but I think we finally locked down next quarter's funding." "I bet you did." She disappeared upstairs. A few moments later, I heard her office door click open. Then silence. Then, a sharp intake of breath. I sipped my drink, listening. Another pause. Then hurried footsteps. She came back down, slower this time, her eyes scanning my face. "Ethan?" she asked carefully. I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" She hesitated. "Did you move anything in my office today?" I frowned, setting my glass down. "Your office?" "No, why?" Her lips parted, but she stopped herself. She didn't want to tip her hand. She let out a forced laugh. "Nothing. I just thought I left a file out, and it was moved. Must have been my imagination." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "You sure everything's all right? You look a little tense." She swallowed. "No, I'm fine. Just tired." Liar. But I smiled anyway. "All right. Get some rest." She nodded, forcing another smile before heading back upstairs. As soon as she was out of sight, my own smile vanished. She had panicked, and that meant she had something to lose. That night, I laid awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Olivia's slow, even breathing beside me. The pieces were starting to come together. She was hiding something. She was hiding him, but she still thought she was in control. She thought she could cover her tracks. She thought she could lie her way out of this. She had no idea that I was already setting the stage. Because I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to let her fall, hard, and when she did, everyone would see it. The next morning, Olivia acted like nothing was wrong. She moved through the kitchen effortlessly, sipping her coffee, scrolling through her phone, stealing casual glances at me, as if she were trying to read my mood. I gave her nothing. If she was waiting for me to slip, to hint that I had seen the cufflinks, that I had noticed her behavior, she was going to be disappointed. You have meetings today? I asked casually, buttering my toast. She nodded, tucking her phone into her bag. Yeah, luncheon first, then back-to-back planning sessions for the next gala. I'll probably be home late. Lies. I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching her closely. Anyone I know attending? She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Just the usual team. And Preston, of course. He's been so helpful with everything. Of course he has. I forced a small smile. Sounds productive. She studied me, waiting, searching. But I didn't give her anything. I just kissed her cheek, grabbed my keys, and left for work. But the moment I got into my car, I checked my phone. The GPS tracker I had installed on her car last night was active. And I wasn't going to her office today. I was following Olivia. I stayed a few cars behind, keeping enough distance to avoid suspicion. The first stop was exactly as expected, a private club where the luncheon was being held. I parked a block away, waited 15 minutes, then walked toward the entrance. Inside, the event was formal but relaxed. Guests sipped champagne, mingling in small groups, exchanging pleasantries. I stayed near the back, blending into the crowd, scanning the room. Olivia was exactly where she said she'd be, standing by a long table, smiling brightly as she spoke to a small group of women. I frowned. Preston wasn't there. I ordered a drink, kept my distance, but watched. Olivia laughed, gestured, completely in her element. She wasn't sneaking away, wasn't acting suspicious. If she was lying about where she was going today, she was covering it well. After an hour, I left before she could spot me. Maybe I had been wrong. I followed her to the next location. Her car pulled into a sleek high-rise downtown, the kind of place where business meetings happened behind closed doors and expensive contracts were signed over catered lunches. I parked down the street and waited. The GPS showed she was still inside after an hour, then two. My grip tightened around the steering wheel. If she was lying, she was committed. But then something happened that changed everything. At exactly 3:17 p.m., another man arrived. Not Preston. Someone younger, leaner, dressed in a sharp gray suit. He walked past my car, head down, checking his phone, before disappearing into the building Olivia was in. I sat up straighter. Who the hell was that? I pulled out my phone, snapped a quick photo of him, and ran it through a reverse image search. Nothing. No major social media presence, no immediate business connections. He was a ghost. My pulse picked up. Maybe Olivia wasn't cheating with Preston after all. Maybe it was someone else. An hour later, Olivia left the building. Alone. The mystery man never reappeared. She got in her car, adjusting her mirror, smoothing her hair. She didn't look guilty. She looked pleased. I clenched my jaw and started my car, following from a distance as she made her way home. By the time she walked through the front door, she was smiling. Hey, she greeted, dropping her bag on the counter. Long day. I nodded, keeping my expression unreadable. Yeah? Meetings go well. Very, she said, moving toward the fridge, pulling out a bottle of wine. I think the next event is going to be our biggest yet. I studied her, waiting for any sign of hesitation. See Preston today? She paused, just briefly, before pouring her drink. Not really. He was supposed to be at the second meeting, but something came up. Liar. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Who was there? She turned, raising an eyebrow. What's with the interrogation? I smiled. Just curious. She sipped her wine, watching me over the rim of her glass. Same team as usual. I nodded slowly. Nobody knew? She didn't even blink. Nope. My stomach twisted. She was lying straight to my face. And she didn't even flinch. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Preston wasn't the one. Or maybe he was, and this other guy was something different. Another secret. Another lie. I needed more. More proof. More certainty. Because Olivia was good at covering her tracks. But she had no idea I had already started following the footprints she left behind. and I wasn't stopping until I knew everything. The next morning, Olivia acted like nothing had changed. She moved through the house with effortless ease, pouring coffee, scrolling through emails, humming softly to herself as if the night before hadn't happened, as if she hadn't lied straight to my face, as if I hadn't caught her. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I sat at the table, stirring my coffee slowly, watching her. "You're in a good mood," I said casually. She glanced at me, smiling. "Am I?" "You seem lighter," I said, tapping my spoon against the rim of the mug, like a weight's been lifted. She tilted her head, studying me for a second too long before turning back to her phone. Maybe I just finally have things under control. I smiled, but inside, my mind was racing. Under control. What did that mean? What exactly was she balancing so carefully? I decided to push. "That reminds me. I never asked, who was at the meeting yesterday? I might know some of them." She hesitated for half a second. "Just the usual planning team." I nodded. "And Preston?" She exhaled dramatically. "Ethan, are we really doing this?" "Preston wasn't there." "I told you already." "Right." I took a sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch. "And no one else knew?" She gave me a sharp look. "No. Why would there be?" "Liar." I studied her for a moment longer, then shrugged. "No reason. Just curious." She watched me carefully, waiting for some sign that I knew something. But I had already learned that she was most dangerous when she was on guard. So I gave her nothing. And then, just as I hoped, she relaxed. That was her mistake. That afternoon, I checked the GPS tracker again. Olivia had driven straight to work. No detours, no unexpected stops. She was careful, but she wasn't perfect. I knew that now, and it was only a matter of time before she made a mistake. So I waited. That evening, as she stepped into the shower, I took her phone. She had always kept it locked, but I had memorized her passcode long ago. I swiped through her messages first, nothing suspicious. Then I checked her emails. Everything looked normal, business-related, until I found a draft email she hadn't sent yet. "Preston, let's be discreet about this. I'll handle Ethan. The last thing I need is questions right now. I'll let you know when I can step away for longer." No subject line, no signature, just that single paragraph, typed out, unsent. I gripped the phone tighter, my blood turning ice cold. Step away for longer. Step away from what? From me? From our marriage? Was she planning to leave? Or was she just covering her tracks, keeping both of us in the dark until she decided who to choose? My grip tightened. She had no idea I was already ahead of her. The next night, I made my move. She was getting ready for another event. Another high-class gathering filled with donors and sponsors and people who believed every fake smile Olivia gave them. I watched her curl her hair, apply her lipstick, slipping into an elegant black dress like she wasn't walking into a disaster she didn't know was coming. "You'll be late," I said, leaning against the doorway. She smirked, fastening her bracelet. "Fashionably late is expected." I nodded, taking a slow sip of my drink. "Are you meeting Preston there?" She barely hesitated. "Probably. You know how these events are. Lots of people, lots of networking." "Right." I set my glass down. "Be careful with him." Her brows furrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "Just saying. Some people don't know how to keep things professional." Her face didn't change, but her shoulders went stiff for half a second. Then she laughed lightly. "Ethan, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were jealous." I met her gaze evenly. "No, Olivia. Not jealous. Just paying attention." She didn't blink. For a moment, we just stood there, the air between us heavier than before. Then she grabbed her purse, kissed my cheek, and left. In the moment the door shut behind her, I got to work. I called my friend, Ryan, who worked security for some of the biggest corporate events in the city. He had access to the kind of surveillance that didn't make it into official records. "Ryan," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I need a favor." A pause. "What kind of favor?" "I need access to tonight's event security footage. Live feed, if possible." Ryan whistled low. "Damn. That bad?" "Worse," I said. "Can you do it?" He sighed. "Give me 20 minutes." I hung up, my pulse steady. Tonight, I was going to watch Olivia's perfect world crumble. An hour later, I sat at my desk, watching the live footage Ryan had sent. The ballroom was packed, glittering under chandeliers, men in tuxedos clinking glasses, women in evening gowns making calculated small talk. And then I spotted Olivia. She was standing near the bar, smiling, her hand lightly touching Preston's arm as she spoke. Too familiar. Too comfortable. I exhaled slowly, my fingers curling into fists. They thought they were untouchable. And that was exactly why they were about to fall. Because tonight wasn't just about catching her. It was about making sure everyone saw it. And when dessert was served, Olivia wouldn't be the only thing getting exposed. I sat in my car outside the event, my fingers drumming against the steering wheel, watching through the live security feed on my phone. Olivia and Preston were standing close. Too close? She was laughing, tilting her head just slightly, her fingertips grazing his arm as she spoke. It was subtle, practiced. The kind of intimacy that doesn't come from a single mistake, but from repetition. I clenched my jaw, breathing slowly through my nose. This wasn't just an affair. This was a pattern. A carefully curated dance they had likely been performing for months, maybe even longer. I had spent weeks wondering, second-guessing myself, questioning my instincts. But there was no questioning what I was seeing now. I glanced at my watch. Almost time. I had planned everything down to the second. The moment dessert was served, the envelope would be placed right in front of her, on a silver platter. One signature. One final blow. But there was one last thing I needed to see. I tapped the screen, switching cameras. Preston had just stepped away, leaving Olivia standing by the bar. She pulled out her phone, glanced around, then typed something quickly. A second later, my own phone buzzed. Olivia, are you awake? I exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. Unbelievable. She had the audacity to check in, to pretend nothing was happening, to keep playing this game even now. I typed back. Me. Just watching something interesting. I imagined her frowning at the message, hesitating, maybe even glancing over her shoulder to see if I was nearby. She wouldn't know. Not yet. Let her sweat. I switched back to the main camera feed. The waitstaff had begun serving dessert. It was time. I stepped out of my car, adjusted my tie, and walked toward the entrance. The ballroom was buzzing, the energy high as the guests settled back into their seats. Laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of conversation filled the space. Olivia was already seated, smiling, chatting, completely oblivious to the storm about to hit. I strode through the crowd, ignoring the nods and polite greetings. I was only here for one thing. At the center of the room, the waiters began placing the dessert plates. Small, delicate soufflés, each adorned with intricate garnishes, except for Olivia's. Instead of a dessert, a single envelope rested on the white plate in front of her. She blinked, tilting her head. For a moment, she just stared at it, confusion flickering across her face. Then, slowly, she reached out, fingers hesitating before sliding the envelope toward her. I stopped a few feet away, hands in my pockets, watching. She lifted the flap, pulled out the papers. Her expression shifted in an instant, from curiosity to shock to sheer panic. A murmur rippled through the table. Olivia? One of the women beside her asked. What is it? She swallowed hard, hands gripping the documents like they might disappear if she just held them tight enough. Then, her eyes flicked upward and locked onto mine. I smiled. Something wrong? I asked, loud enough for the table to hear. She opened her mouth, then shut it, struggling to find the right words. I took a step closer, tilting my head slightly. Go on, Olivia. Read it. Her hands trembled as she glanced down, scanning the words she had never expected to see tonight. Divorce papers. The cause of dissolution? Infidelity. Every documented proof of her affair attached. She inhaled sharply, her face draining of color. The room was silent now, eyes shifting between us, waiting, watching. Preston, seated a few spots away, had finally noticed the commotion. His brows furrowed, his gaze moving between Olivia and me, realization dawning too slowly. I exhaled, turning to the stunned guests and raising my glass. A toast, I said, my voice calm, steady. The silence deepened. I let the moment stretch, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, with a small smirk, I said, to love, trust, and knowing when to throw out rotten leftovers. Gasps. A few muffled laughs. Someone at the far end of the table choked on their drink. Olivia shot up from her chair, the papers crumpled in her hands. Ethan, but I was already turning away. She had spent months, maybe years, weaving her lies, wrapping them so tightly around me that I had begun to doubt myself. Not anymore. I walked out, leaving her standing in the ruins of the life she had set on fire. And I didn't look back. I walked out of that ballroom without breaking my stride, the sound of murmurs and gasps trailing behind me. Olivia was still sitting there, her breath caught in her throat, her hands gripping the divorce papers like they could somehow erase what had just happened. But she wasn't going to talk her way out of this. Not this time. I reached the valet, nodding as they brought my car around. As I slid into the driver's seat, I allowed myself one final glance at the entrance. Would she chase after me? Would she try to salvage what little dignity she had left? Nothing. I smirked. Of course not. Olivia wasn't the kind of woman who admitted defeat so easily. She was calculating, always looking for an angle. And right now, she was inside that ballroom, running through every possible excuse, every way she could spin this to make herself look like the victim. But I had taken away her greatest weapon, control. I started the car and drove home, the city lights blurring past as I exhaled, my grip on the wheel loosening. The weight that had been pressing down on me for months, maybe even years, was gone. She was exposed. The world knew. And now, it was only a matter of time before the cracks in her carefully curated image began to spread. I had barely been home for 15 minutes when my phone started ringing. Olivia. I let it ring. Then a text. Olivia, we need to talk. You can't just walk away like that. I smiled bitterly. Can't I? Another text. Olivia, you blindsided me, Ethan. That was cruel. Cruel. The word made me laugh. Cruel? Like what she had done to me wasn't. Like I hadn't spent the past few months watching, waiting, doubting myself while she played her little games. A few seconds later, another call. I picked up this time, but I didn't say anything. I just let the silence stretch. Ethan? Her voice was shaky, breathless. Please. We need to talk. Why? My voice was calm, steady. So you can lie to me again? I never lied to you. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. You really don't know when to stop, do you? Ethan, listen to me, she said quickly. You're making this out to be something it's not. Yes, I got close to Preston, but it was never. I laughed, the sound cutting her off. Never what, Olivia? Never real? Never serious? Never happened? She swallowed hard. I was going to tell you. Right, I said flatly. That's why you were sneaking around, making excuses, lying about meetings. That's why you left a trail of evidence behind, thinking I wouldn't notice. A pause. Then, softer, I didn't want to hurt you. I clenched my jaw, my fingers curling into a fist. But you did. Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, Can we just talk? Face to face? Please? I considered it for a moment, rolling the idea around in my head. Then I exhaled. Fine. I hung up before she could say anything else. She wanted to talk? Fine. Let's talk. 20 minutes later, she pulled into the driveway, stepping out of her car like she was walking into a war zone. Her posture was stiff, her hands gripping the strap of her purse. When she stepped inside, she glanced around, like she was searching for traps. She wasn't wrong. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So, talk. She hesitated, then took a slow breath. Ethan, I'm sorry. For all of it. I never meant for it to get this far. I never meant to. Save it, I interrupted. Just tell me the truth. For once. Her lips parted, then shut again. She was weighing her options, deciding how much she could still control. I pushed off the counter, stepping closer. Who was he to you, Olivia? Preston? Just a convenient distraction? Or were you actually planning to leave? Her eyes flickered with something. Guilt? Fear? I wasn't sure. Don't lie, I warned. She swallowed, looking down. I don't know. I let out a humorless laugh. You don't know? She ran a hand through her hair, frustration creeping into her expression. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just exciting, different. But I was never going to walk away from us. I scoffed. Right. Because keeping me around was convenient. She flinched. Tell me something, Olivia. I continued. my voice quieter now. If I hadn't found out, would you have ever stopped? She opened her mouth, but no words came. And there it was, the truth she couldn't say out loud. I exhaled, nodding slowly. That's what I thought. She stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Ethan, please. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. We've been through so much. Stop. My voice was firm, unyielding. There is no we anymore, Olivia. You made sure of that. Tears welled in her eyes. But I love you. I shook my head. No. You love yourself. You love what I gave you. The stability, the home, the life. But you never really loved me. Her breath hitched, her hands trembling. Ethan, please. I turned, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out the suitcase I had packed for her earlier. I set it by the door. She stared at it, then at me. What's this? You're leaving. She let out a breathless laugh, shaking her head. You're kicking me out? You don't live here anymore, Olivia. This isn't your home. Her lower lip trembled. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Maybe Preston has a spare room. Her face crumbled. I opened the door. Goodbye, Olivia. She hesitated for a long moment, then slowly grabbed the suitcase handle, her hands shaking. She stepped outside, turning back one last time. You'll regret this, she whispered. I held her gaze. I doubt it. And with that, I shut the door. The house was quiet. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think without the undercurrent of Olivia's presence. No footsteps pacing upstairs. No clinking of wine glasses late at night. No hushed phone call she thought I didn't hear. She was gone. And yet, I wasn't finished. It wasn't enough that she had been caught. It wasn't enough that I had thrown her out. Olivia had spent months, maybe years building her image, making sure she was seen as the perfect wife, the untouchable socialite, the respected planner of every charity event that mattered. She had carefully curated her life to look perfect, but I knew the truth. And now, so would everyone else. The first step was simple: destroy her reputation. I had spent the last few months collecting proof, texts, emails, the security footage from the gala, even old financial records that showed just how close she and Preston had been. She thought she had covered her tracks, but she had underestimated me. I emailed everything to the charity board. Every single detail. The infidelity. The secret rendezvous. The blatant favoritism Preston had shown in donating funds. Everything that would shatter the image Olivia had built. Within an hour, I got a response. Board Chair, Ethan, this is extremely concerning. We need to discuss this immediately. I smiled, closing my laptop. Let the storm begin. Next, it was time for Preston to pay. Olivia wasn't the only one who had something to lose. Preston was a businessman, a well-respected donor with a spotless reputation, until now. His name was attached to major contracts, partnerships, deals that thrived on public trust. I sent copies of the footage to two of the biggest corporate sponsors supporting his projects. Anonymous, of course. Just a polite tip-off that their trusted partner might not be as honorable as they thought. By the end of the day, whispers had already begun. And Preston? He had no idea where it was coming from. But the final blow, that was personal. Olivia had built her career on her name. She had positioned herself as the face of every charity event, every elite social gathering. The one thing she valued more than anything else was her status. So I made sure she lost it. I contacted a journalist, a woman named Lauren I had met years ago, back when Olivia still pretended to care about being a wife. Lauren ran an exposed-style column, the kind that thrived on scandal. She picked up on the story immediately. Lauren, you're telling me that the woman who preaches about family values and elite standards has been sneaking around with her top donor? Me, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Lauren, and you have proof? I sent her everything. By morning, the article was live. Beneath the ballrooms, the scandal of Olivia Caldwell and the charity that covered for her. It spread like wildfire. Social media exploded. Comments flooded in, people questioning everything about her, calling her a fraud, a liar. The woman who had built a career on reputation was now the subject of a scandal she couldn't escape. And the best part? I didn't have to say a single word. I just sat back and watched. 2 days later, Olivia called. I let it ring. Then she called again. And again. Finally, I picked up. Her voice was shaking. You did this. I smiled. Did what? Don't play dumb, Ethan. She snapped. The article, the board meeting, the sponsors dropping their contracts. This is you written all over it. I leaned back in my chair. You sure about that? Or maybe people just finally saw you for what you are. She let out a shaky breath. Ethan, please. You've made your point. I lost my job, my reputation. What more do you want? I pretended to think. An apology would be nice. She was silent. Nothing to say? I continued. You were real confident when you were lying to my face. But now that everyone knows, suddenly you have nothing? I didn't mean to hurt you. She whispered. I laughed coldly. But you did. And now? You're the one drowning. She let out a choked sound. Anger, frustration, maybe even regret. Ethan, you don't have to keep doing this. You got your revenge. Can't we just stop? I exhaled slowly, tapping my fingers against the desk. She wanted me to stop, because for the first time in her life, Olivia had no power, no backup plan, no safety net, and I wasn't going to give her one. Goodbye, Olivia, I said, my voice steady. And then I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.